In the years following the Great Civil War, America and Americans struggled for unity. The war had bitterly divided America, North from South, black and white, and in border states such as Kentucky, even families were divided. It caused brother to fight against brother because of their beliefs. It was a time of healing throughout the United States, and the wounds caused by that war were slow to heal. Thousands of American men and boys left their families to join in the war effort. Many of those who returned were scarred for life, both mentally and physically. The years they had spent on the battlefields had forced many of them to become heartless, ruthless killers. They became known as outlaws. There would be many well-known names as outlaws, but none would be better known than two brothers from Missouri, Frank and his younger brother Jesse James. During the war, the James brothers were members of Quantrill's Raiders, Southern guerrilla fighters known for their ruthless robbing, burning, and killing. It would come as no surprise for them to continue this lifestyle long after the war had ended. Clell Miller and two other brothers, Bob and Cole Younger, joined Frank and Jesse. The James gang had pulled many daring robberies since 1867. But now the group had been separated over the past several days, staying in various homes in and around Columbia while they scouted the lay of the land, as well as the daily routine of citizens and the National Bank of Columbia. It's April 29th, 1872, and the small, sleepy southern Kentucky town of Columbia is about to become a part of American history as they feel the wrath and brutality of the James Younger gang. It was a typical nice spring day. Since Adair County was mainly a farming community, few people were in Columbia, and very little business was being conducted in town, and even less at the bank. Adair County Circuit Court Clerk Thomas Page, local lawyer Thomas Claiborne Winfrey, and bank customer William H. Hudson joined Bank Director James Garnett and cashier R.A.C. Martin in the bank this morning. By this time, the five outlaws had reunited, shared with each other their scouting reports, and made their final plans to rob the Bank of Columbia. With such little activity in town, the group had gone virtually unnoticed as they rode onto the public square in the center of town. As they sauntered their horses across town, they scanned the street, looking for the telltale sign that they had been detected as would-be outlaws. But today there was no sign. The local townspeople were going about their normal, daily routine. It looked as though it was going to be business as usual for the James gang. Frank James and Cole Younger make their way across the square, followed closely by Clell Miller. Bob Younger and Jesse James continue riding on the square, as they are the eyes for the gang. They keep an ever-watchful eye out for the first sign of trouble, so they can instantly signal the rest of the gang. Frank and Cole dismount in front of the bank and give Miller their horses to hold as they make their way into the bank. Bank cashier Martin was sitting in a chair facing the doorway, with his back to the counter, and was the first to see the two men entering the bank. The other 4 men had gathered off to one side, talking. After entering the bank, the outlaws pulled their pistols and told the group of their intentions to rob the bank. Frank James leveled his gun at Page, threatening to shoot him as he told Martin to open the safe. Martin's sudden movement caused Frank to aim in his direction as the first shot was fired unintentionally, mortally wounding Martin. Witnessing this horrible sight, Winfrey and Page darted out of the door of the bank, making a run for cover. Knowing that something had gone wrong with their plan, the other outlaws pulled their pistols and began firing at Winfrey and Page and anyone else on the street. A brief scuffle ensued in the bank, resulting in Garnett being slightly wounded in the hand as he and Hudson ran from the bank to safety. Meanwhile, inside the bank, Frank and Cole dragged Martin around behind the counter to the vault, still intent on forcing him to open the burglar-proof safe. Martin, being very severely wounded, continued to protect the contents of the safe and defied the outlaws' demands to open it. Realizing their efforts were useless, they grabbed the money from the cash drawer and ran to their horses. Hearing all of the commotion and realizing that the bank was being robbed across the street, Isaac Cravens, clerk at the Phillips and Bradshaw Company, grabbed his gun and began firing at the gang as they were exiting the town square. The outlaws returned fire and drove Cravens back inside, and no one was wounded in the gunfire. The gang rode hard off the town square and headed south on Burkesville Street until they reached Pettit's Fork, where they turned up the creek to Conover's Mill. Civil War Captain James R. Hindman quickly formed a posse chasing the outlaws. The gang lost the posse when they turned north towards Taylor County. They were last seen in these parts entering the hills of Nelson County. A dark shadow now hovered over Columbia. The James gang had brutalized the little Kentucky town. Martin was deemed a hero and had given his life while protecting the money which local citizens had entrusted to the Bank of Columbia. Bank Director James Garnett, who suffered a slight hand wound, later lost his hand due to the shot fired by Frank James. Time would eventually heal the wounds of the day. The brutality and pain inflicted would never be forgotten. Likewise, neither would the supreme act of heroism by R.A.C. Martin. The day would go down in history as April 29th, 1872, the day Jesse James and his gang robbed the National Bank of Columbia.